Hey, welcome everybody. Please go ahead, continue grabbing yourself dinner. We're going to start the program for this evening. I'd like to introduce Tyrell Comeaux, who's the president of our board of directors here at Mic Program, to kick things off this evening.
All right. Like Justin said, my name is Tyrell Comeaux. I'm the current president of the board of directors for the Mic Program. So thank you everyone for attending this special event today. We have some beautiful weather, so it worked out on our side this year, so we're extremely grateful for that. It's great to see all of you this evening in support of a healthier future for you. Mic began more than 20 years ago to extend health education early enough in the lives of people to avoid the chronic diseases which lead to kidney failure. In the 2 decades that followed, Mic has propelled young people towards healthier futures that greatly impact them and those around them. A little bit about my personal story and how I came to become the president of the Mic Board of Directors. I began with Mic as a mentor for youth at Rosemary Anderson High School many years back. I'm excited to share that Mic is again serving this same school this year, and we're just expanding into the middle school. One of the reasons why I stay with Mic is how we impact youth, and I've been able to see that firsthand in the classroom from my time as a mentor. They're mentors in their communities. Let's watch a small glimpse of what I mean in this video. So we have a video for everyone.
Mic program provides health education throughout the Portland area and the Willamette Valley. The high school students in Mic get to meet people at different stages of their lives, and they get to ask them questions they may not get to ask otherwise. Mic program does a lot of different things, from bringing mentors into the classroom to hosting a variety of health professionals as guest speakers. Ultimately, face-to-face interactions become a big part of the impact that Mic has. These interactions help students explore where they might go with their careers, and it helps push them towards new opportunities. Particularly with kids who are interested in healthcare already, it helps guide them towards a career that might make them happy in the long term and help them be successful and healthy individuals in our society. We like to bring in outside entities, whether that's guest speakers from different walks of life or our mentors, who often come from nursing schools, medical schools, and college programs in the schools we serve. These individuals bring a lot of expertise from different fields, and they bring with them a level of motivation and engagement that the high school students especially like. They respond quite well. The Mic program provides a very great experience to get exposure, to see what it's like to be a college student, and what it might be like to be in the healthcare field.
The Mic program is a very great experience to get exposure, to see kind of what it's like to be a student, to be in the healthcare field. You get people coming back from their rotations that are actually practicing. Not everybody gets that opportunity, so it's an amazing program.
I think being a mentor is so important because you grow up and some things seem so unattainable, and I feel like there's a lot of people or things out there that tell you you can't do something, so having a mentor is nice just to have someone that is constantly encouraging you and showing you that you are capable of achieving those dreams.
And I think it would be going without saying, I'd like to acknowledge all the other board members who help in this organization. I know you guys are sitting down now, you don't have to stand up, but just want to acknowledge all the hard work and the sacrifices that we make to continue to support this organization, and I really appreciate that. So thank you to all the board members who are in attendance tonight. All right, it is now my privilege to introduce Mica, who will be serving as our MC for this evening's festivities. So Mica is an account director at the Oregonian. Mica is also a member of Mic's board of directors and on the event planning committee for this event. So,
Thank you so much, Tyrell. Hi, everyone. Good evening. Everyone's in their spring colors and everyone's looking great. Thank you so much for coming out tonight. Also want to say thank you so much for the change of venue and just being flexible. We had some wear and tear because of the storm that happened at our previous location in Lake Oswego. So we're wishing them a speedy recovery, but we're also saying thank you to everybody here this evening. Just be flexible and transitioning to this beautiful World Forestry Center. So thank you so much for joining us. I'm so thankful to be here tonight. I'm so happy to be here. So I'm really excited to share with you how I learned about my program just very quickly. I was looking for a place to donate. And I wanted to donate to something that shared a mission that aligned with things that I'm passionate about. And I put a post on Facebook in my Villebois community, for those who know the community of Villebois, and yeah. And I said, can anyone recommend a place that I can donate? And my program was one of them. And I clicked and I followed the website and I took a look and I said, okay, I think this is in alignment with my background in healthcare and my passion for marginalized individuals. And so I met with Justin and I grilled him. And he stood the test of time. I mean, because I can be pretty tough. And he answered all my questions. He made me feel comfortable about the mission and the community work that Mike is doing. And I've been donating for 2 or 3 years now, and I've also been on the planning committee for this very event that we are here at tonight. So thank you so much to Justin and Tyrell and everybody on the board, and thank you to all of you for being here tonight. So let's talk about what Mike program actually does, okay? Health equity is something that's very important. There's a difference between equality and equity. And we want to make sure that it's an opportunity for a healthy life for all, where everyone is at, meeting everybody where they're at. That is what equity is. We also talk about health education with Mike, the power of mentoring the youth towards healthcare careers so that they can find people who look like them, who are where they are from, so we can help eliminate some of those healthcare disparities, not just help them go away, but help them go away forever. Among those who support Mike are some of our sponsors here tonight. It's very important that we make sure that we say thank you to them as well. You've seen some of their names kind of circulating around the screen here, but I want you to all help me, if you could, with a round of applause as I call out each sponsor. First and foremost, we want to say thank you to Pacific Source Health Plans, Northwest Reno Clinic, Deerwood Ranch Wild Horse Eco Sanctuary, Legacy Health, the Oregonian Media Group, Mercer Advisors, Kaiser Permanente, Oregon Dairy and Nutrition Council, and the Portland Children's Levy. Additionally, we want to say thank you to those who offer important in-kind sponsorship, and that goes to Print Sync. Yes, we're going to keep clapping, thank you. Providence Health and Services, One Up Solutions Northwest. And of course, a special thank you to Portland Catering Company. Thank you so much. It's now my pleasure to introduce our keynote speaker for the evening. It's Dr. Jonathan Purnell. Dr. Purnell is going to speak with us about his work and how it coincides and connects with Mike's mission. Dr. Purnell is board certified in endocrinology and obesity medicine. So he's treating patients with obesity, diabetes, and lipid disorders. Dr. Purnell is a professor in the Department of Medicine at the Knight Cardiovascular Institute and the Division of Endocrinology at OHSU. He also serves as Chief of the Center for Preventive Cardiology and Associate Director at the Bob and Charlee Moore Institute for Nutrition and Wellness. I mean, if that's not a background, I don't know what is, okay? Because that is a pedigree if we have not ever seen or heard of one. So without further ado, please welcome our keynote speaker, Dr. Purnell.
So thank you, Mica. I certainly hope this goes well because I don't want you grilling me later. Thank you to Mike and Susan Bagby for inviting me here tonight to give this talk. I see in the audience quite a few luminaries, so I kind of have a little bit of imposter syndrome standing up here tonight. Justin, when I talked with him, gave me 3 charges in my 10-minute talk, although it'll go a little bit longer than that. The first is to talk a little bit about my research and what I do clinically, which is basically investigate causes and consequences of chronic diseases with, as you heard, a focus on weight management and obesity. The second is to talk a little bit about myself and part of my journey. And the third then is to have such a strong finish that everyone in this room opens up their wallets and it generously gives to donates to the Mica program. So we'll see how it goes. Now, oftentimes when you do research, you want to try to dazzle audiences with science. That oftentimes leads to a number of people falling asleep. So tonight, instead, I'm going to try to dazzle you with, let's see if this works. Tech. No, with icons. So I'm going to dazzle you with icons. The overall theme of my talk tonight is to kind of introduce about the concept of chronic diseases, how it's a little bit misunderstood, and how if we really want to make an impact on the health of our society, we got to start a whole lot earlier than when I see them in my clinic. So, chronic disease is what I want to focus on and the role that prevention has in that. But I want to start by talking about how it oftentimes gets mixed up with its kind of distant cousin, acute disease. They share the same name, disease, but we oftentimes think of disease as something along the lines of this, where you might get exposed to a bug and you might get a cold or a flu or something like that. You go see your provider or urgent care, and they might give you an antibiotic or a medication or tell you to go home and drink some tea and binge watch something on Netflix, and so you're going to get better on it. And oftentimes when we think of this, we think, okay, as a result of that, I'm going to be able to go back to the way it was before. I'm sorry, I'm not sure if it's coming through. Maybe this, is it? Up I got it. Now it goes backwards. And backs. But the hallmark of the acute disease is you go back to the way you were before. You were the same and doing the same things. Now contrast that with chronic disease. Now chronic disease we think of typically in today's society as being things like hypertension or diabetes or heart disease. And in fact, these are the leading killers of patients or people, populations in developed countries around the world. So they're major problems. And when you get these diseases, you oftentimes go to your provider and you're given a talk on lifestyle and then medications. But the difference between acute disease and chronic disease is there's a directionality to chronic disease. Acute disease goes over and comes back. Once you get chronic disease, the vast majority of patients, of people, have a new physiology, a new set point for whatever it is, blood pressure, blood sugar level, body weight, things like that. And this directionality, think of like an inherent physiology. I always think of a wall of flip switches that have lights on them, because I used to watch all these sci-fi movies when I was a kid, the robot with all the lights on them. And you flip those switches and you end up in a different state, a different position in your physiology. But those switches don't flip back. So instead of going back the way you were, now you're in a chronic condition and your best friend is the pharmacist at the pharmacy, because you have to go there every 3 months for that. So it's important to know what causes chronic diseases in order to allow us to do something about it. And I was thinking maybe I should do a drum roll here or something, because I'm going to give the big reveal here. What causes chronic diseases? And the medical students all want to know this. It's genetics plus environment. So it's not a big reveal. We all kind of know this already. But I want to dive a little bit more into this because, again, keep in mind that most of us think of a disease as something that you can go back from after you've been there, like that acute disease thing. And both chronic diseases, I break them up into genetics, environment, and then genetics plus environment. And in the case of genetics, these are conditions that are the most severe. They usually are hitting pathways in the body's physiology that are very vulnerable, most vulnerable at a very early stage. So they typically are things like cystic fibrosis, sickle cell anemia, things that children will present with because of a key regulatory pathway is gone. In this particular case, lifestyle is still important, but didn't obviously, wasn't present in a baby or in a young child at that point. So it's not curing it, but it certainly is important to do because sometimes you can make the situation worse. And it happens in about 1 in 200 to about 4 to 5% of the population. Very small amount of people, but usually very important because of the severity and how it affects them. The next one is just the pure environment. Not the combination yet, just the pure environment. And probably the best example that I know of this is near and dear to our hearts in terms of blood pressure management. So sometimes patients who have hypertension will be able to go see their dietitian, we'll talk to their provider, they'll get on a low-salt diet. Many of you may have heard about this already, maybe limit or curtail entirely all their alcohol. And actually, as long as they continue to do that the rest of their life, eat a low-salt diet and curtail alcohol intake, they can manage to avoid having to take medication. That too, so lifestyle is key in this one. It's really important. It is a hallmark of reversible disease, the only chronic disease part that's truly reversible. But it too, it represents a fairly small population of only about 5% of the people that I see. So 5% are pure genetics, 5% are pure lifestyle, and the rest of the 90% are a combination of the two. And so in this particular case, the typical, or there is no typical onset of this condition. It can happen anytime across the lifespan. Type 2 diabetes can happen in youth, it can happen in your 20s, it can happen in your 70s. And so in this particular case, we think genetics plays a very major role in the expression of this, but it's just the predisposition. The environment influences the severity, how the lifestyle, you could be destined to develop high blood pressure. I have plenty of marathon runners who have hypertension. But if you have a crappy lifestyle, then that's not going to do you any favors, and you're going to need more medications. But medications are still typically needed in this situation. Still very crucial. I don't want to minimize it at all. It's still very important. Let me go in here. One of the times in. So, but the medications, and this is where it oftentimes gets misunderstood, because contrasting to the acute disease, where you take the medicine and then you stop it, chronic disease it's lifelong therapy. If the lifestyle works, it's lifelong. If the medicines is lifelong, it's not because people are lazy. It's not because they're not working hard enough. It's because their physiology is, those little switches that I envisioned are flipped, and now you need something to fix it. So this led to my mid-career crisis. And let me back up, because I've been clicking this thing because it's not working. Yeah. You've been doing it? Oh, okay, go back. All right, go back. No, go back. Go back. All right. So what I was going to say was that all my trainees and all my medical students and all my, postdocs and stuff make avatars for themselves. So I was going to say, I spent a lot of time working on my avatar, and now go ahead. So I hope you see the resemblance there. For those of you under the age of 50, so in my career crisis, go ahead. By the time, if you're a patient with one of these chronic diseases and you're sitting in my office, then you've usually tried almost everything. And I know lifestyle is not going to be sufficient for that, and mental therapy will be necessary. So when I tell patients, I can treat you, but I can't unfortunately cure you. Right? So the real crisis for me was that if I'm not curing it, and we want to lower the rates of whatever that disease is, hypertension, diabetes, obesity, or all of them, we got to do a better job of preventing it. I don't have a prescription in my office to get food so that people can eat it at home. I don't have a prescription for daycare so a mom can have time to go to the grocery store to get it. So we just need to do, those are the things I'll be sort of mentioning a little bit of. So let's turn now to obesity. This is a graph of the rates of rise of obesity across several countries that was written in 2000. Now, I've been doing this since the 1990s, and when this came out, we knew rates of overweight and obesity were rising in our society. We all looked at this and laughed. We said, how can you predict in 2025 that we have 40% obesity rates in America? And that's exactly what we have today. And it's because of the influences in the environment. So that level, so you can see prior to 1985, there still were people who met the definition of obesity back then, BMI over 30. So there is a background prevalence of it, but that rise from up there is the influence of the changing environment within the developed countries on top of the genetic background. So if you look at twin studies, if you look at adoptee studies, if you look at family studies, about 70% of what determines our adult weight is determined by our genetics. So those of us who are predisposed to unwanted weight gain can look to their family members. Also, those of us who have managed to survive in what we consider a healthy weight range in this environment is also 70% determined by genetics. So those of us who maintain a healthier weight are not superior, we're not better. In fact, I could definitely say that for myself, but we're lucky. So that rise, though, from 1985 on up is heavily influenced by the environment, that 30 to 60%. The other important part about this is that they also predicted that other developed countries or developing countries would suffer the same fate. And that's exactly what's happened. So we're not alone. Back in the 80s, and the United States was said, oh, you guys are just lazy. You guys, can't figure it out. You have bad foods. But it turns out every country around the world is doing this that has developed environment. Do I flip my finger? So the other thing about, I mentioned before, chronic diseases that are the result of environment and genetics can come on at any time. And there's a fun fact that a lot of people don't know, is that the peak age for obesity around the world, this is data from around the world, is around 65. So that means you could be normal weight in childhood, 20s, 30s, 40s, and 50s, and still put on weight and develop obesity. You don't know until 65 what your peak weight could be attained. And after 65 it goes downhill, not for good reasons. Because at that point you start losing muscle mass, and then you're gaining fat. Next slide. So, and go ahead again. So, as I mentioned, men and women can develop obesity at any particular time. Women have some special hormonal transition periods that can really turbocharge this process. So the first is puberty, the second is pregnancy, and then the third is menopause, and that menopausal transition is when that special central weight gain occurs. And the rates of overweight and obesity are up to 80% in our society now. So obesity is 40%, put another 40% on top of that for overweight status. This is a highly prevalent disease. So again, what are we going to do about it? If by the time they're in my office it's too late, let's go back to environment. So let's look at that 30 to 60%, what we can do to try to affect this. And I want to talk in three broad strokes. So lowering activity has happened in our society. And this is smaller than I originally put it in there, but for anybody under the age of 70, this is called stickball. And this was probably taken in New York, but it could have been any of the big cities back in the East Coast. And yes, parents actually let their kids go out to play in the street, and they didn't want them back in the house until the sun went down. That was a truism. And kids would go out, and they'd find whatever was available, sticks and balls, and they'd play. All right, so next one. So anyone under the age of 60, this is called jump rope. Double dutch. Yeah, all right. So yes, parents in Philadelphia would let their girls go out to play in the street while the cars were whizzing by, and they would spend hours out there doing this, and they have competitions. Nowadays, we have screen time. You know, if your kids aren't safe going outside, if you want to keep them occupied, if they have peer pressure, you know, and just even about 15, 20 years ago, screen time was measured in like 2-hour increments. Did you spend 2 hours in front of TV? Did you spend 4 hours in, doing gaming? Now they're talking about all-day screen time, because kids have their iPhones with them all the time. Our technologies have made us less active. So activity is one thing. The next that has changed in the last 30 or 40 years is the availability, and not just the availability, the penetrance of calorie-dense, what we call fast foods, snack foods. Things that you look on the package, they don't actually have any food in them. They have a lot of chemicals. And I also want to point out marketing, because it's not just that these are prevalent. Go ahead. But my son, when he was in high school, was tortured by this ad that would come on at late night TV. So it's from a famous fast food place, and it says, fourth meal. You're out, you're hungry, you're doing the fourth meal. Now, who has to invent a fourth meal? And so, one more, click. And it says right there, no, actually go back. There should be another, maybe, the little red line right there. Should go under that word that says just. So I want to blank out the word just and say, it's not food. If they'd done that, that would have been truth in advertising. But, this stuff works. People, he was tortured because he would literally get up at 11 o'clock at night and go down and look for food. He didn't need to, the thought hadn't entered his mind, but now he's doing it. And so we have people who run dietetics programs here, who have dietitians. This is our children's dietitian. This is who is telling our kids what to eat and when to eat it. It's not someone who's professional and things like that. So this is a very strong and very difficult thing to overcome because it's so important. And the final thing, which has to do with the Moore Institute as well, is the environment of the womb. Because the womb is also exposed through the mom to all the external environments as well. So next slide. So this is a slide that Susan Bagley gave me a while ago that illustrates how this plays out, not just in terms of that next child, but intergenerationally. So on the left there is the grandmother. She's still young enough to have a child. Within her womb is a daughter. Within that daughter is also forming the eggs for the granddaughter. So the mom might not have had high blood pressure or had obesity, but now is brought into an environment where those pressures are brought to bear. And then they're passed through the womb to the first daughter. Now she grows up with a higher expression of obesity and hypertension, still in the same environment, and now she grows up to have a daughter who then has even greater expression. So when we talk about the environment, it's not just what we are exposed to now, and this is true for men too. Our testes don't get any pass on this in terms of passing on stuff to the ovary, and it's not just the ovaries. But this is a potentially a transgenerational feed-forward system. So it makes it even more important to be going as far upstream as we can. Next slide. So my crisis was, if we have a chronic disease that can come on at any time up to age 65, affects 80% of the population, impacts over 200 other health conditions that obesity does, and only has a 5% response rate to lifestyle alone after onset, but everybody thinks that everybody should be able to just eat right and go out and exercise and lose all that weight, but that directionality has already occurred. Then who gets prevention? Everybody. So I don't reserve my recommendations about lifestyle to only people who have conditions. It's everybody. Young, old, thin, overweight, heavy. And not only that, we need to go earlier than that. We need to include this sort of improved environment for women of childbearing age and pregnant women. So what does this look like? One of my favorite analogies of this comes from Larry Wallach, who's the former dean of PSU Urban Studies. And we think of the mom as the community, or the womb, the mom is the womb of the child, the baby. So this is like their environment. And what he said, and had come up with in one of these programs, was that the community is our womb. It's the womb that surrounds the mom and the rest of us. What I mean by that is how we plot out our properties, how we build, where we put our schools, are they walkable or not? And then our businesses as well. Our stores within walking distance. And importantly, are our parks safe to go to? Are they available? And then transportation. Nothing wrong with cars, but they don't really provide you any opportunity to get out and stretch your legs and be active. So how do we develop transportation systems that everybody can get to and utilize and become more active? And so this has what I call both a halo effect, because it affects families as well as men and women who don't have, and people who don't have children, and ripple effect, because these benefits will be seen transgenerationally. So last slide. So I think one of the things that I've seen that have been really impressed with and gives me hope for the city of Portland is this thing called the Albino Vision Trust. And I'm sorry, Justin, if I'm plugging another nonprofit or foundation. But the Albina district was one of the historic black neighborhoods that the U.S. government just plowed right through and destroyed. And there's a group of people who are, I think, really visionary for rejuvenating Portland's history and its future by envisioning as a place where people can afford to live there, who have access to education, park space, and such like that. So my point of my whole talk was, I'm happy to treat people. We need to treat people who have these conditions. We need to do that. But if we really want to make an impact on the prevalence of the disease and the severity of the disease, now and in the future, we need to prevent it. And we need to go all the way back, and everybody needs it. So that's why I think Mike's mission is so good, because it really operates at an early level and hits a wide group of people, especially those most vulnerable. So I don't know, Justin, hope that worked. So thanks. Do you want to do questions? Okay. I won't comment. Does anybody have anything? Sometimes, when I used to give this talk to the medical students, they used to get really depressed. Oh shoot, there's nothing I can do. But there actually is a lot you can do in terms of prevention, and it's still very important. All right.
Can you talk about Ozempic and Jaro?
Sure. Do you have another hour? Which part of it do you want to know about?
I'm just curious about what you think about them. There's a lot of stuff in the media that I think is interesting and excited. We don't hear from doctors very often.
Yeah, I have to keep reminding my patients, don't go to Dr. Google, don't get your health information from TikTok. It still doesn't stop them from doing it. So, probably about 1980, the World Health Organization, which defined the word chronic disease, recognized obesity to be a chronic disease, meaning that there's a physiology in place that governs all of our body weight. There's a pathophysiology that leads some people to have higher body weights, and then as a result of that higher body weight, they suffer the consequences: diabetes, heart failure, other things. So when it's a chronic disease, it has this directionality to it. When we think of this as no problem in terms of high blood pressure. You know, you have an uncle who had a stroke because they didn't treat their blood pressure or didn't treat themselves right. You don't want that, so you go see your doctor, your blood pressure's up. They say, well, Miss Jones, I'm sorry, I want you to go on this low salt diet, but this is high enough and we need to start a medication. You don't bat an eye. But with weight management, that's biblical. That's like cuts to the bone in terms of, your character. Because this is slothfulness. This is one of the levels of hell, gluttony. So that's just misunderstanding, because obesity is the only chronic disease I know of in which there's a behavior as a manifestation of the underlying disease. So when you think of it as a character issue, then a lot of people will say any treatment is extreme. You're just being lazy. And I remember hearing Matt Lauer on the Today Show when one of the earlier generations of obesity medicines came out. He goes, isn't this just a willpower pill? And I can tell you, if you want to come follow me in my clinic, which I see patients, all day, I've met one who has busted their butt to improve their weight. And what I tell them is, it's not so much, we don't weigh in our lifetime what we want to weigh. I don't pick how many calories I need to eat. I don't say, today I want to weigh 5 pounds more or 5 pounds less than I did before. We weigh what our brains will allow us to weigh. And so if our brain isn't set on a certain level, then it'll fight you until you get back to it. So the medications like not Ozempic actually, it's called Wegovy or Zepbound. It's the same exact medicine, but the FDA requires under the label is something different. Work in that part of the brain that is responsible for governing what our brain thinks is our weight should be normal. And when it aligns with the pathways in the brain that got people to my office, then what it does is it allows them to eat the fewer number of calories, to not be as hungry, not be thinking about food as much, and settle at a lower body weight and be happy with it. So as before, people are really trying hard. Okay, I got to eat this amount of portion. I got to exercise this amount, not knowing that the brain is sensing all that and making adjustments. So you can make an adjustments for your calorie intake, you can make an adjustment for your energy expenditure, but as soon as you do that, your body's already sensed it and made its own set of adjustments. So the medicines interfere with that in the same way that a blood pressure medicine interferes with the control your body has on that, and allows you to maintain a normal blood pressure while you take the medicine. And the Ozempic is really effective. Not Ozempic, Wegovy. And the other one's called Mounjaro or Zepbound, tirzepatide, is even better effective. As long as you take it, your brain will be happy at a lower body weight. You'll be healthier, you'll be happier, you'll activate all those things. But you have to take it the rest of your life. And it doesn't negate or minimize any of the importance of lifestyle. Just like with someone who's being treated for blood pressure, we don't tell them, go ahead and eat all the salt you want. Because what you're doing is you're still getting the benefit of the medicine, you're just not getting the maximum benefit. And if you're taking the medicine, you want to. Now, one interesting thing about Wegovy is that our brain's neurocircuitry is pretty complex in this regard. And our behaviors involve cravings and desires and things like that for food or pairings. And so what's happening now is that people start to now think about food a different way. They've actually been thinking about healthier foods rather than being the victim of, I guess maybe it's like a shield against that marketing I was talking about. And people in Wall Street, I heard a discussion about this recently, are starting to not invest in Wendy's and McDonald's because they're envisioning that this will help shape people's behaviors, not just in how much they eat, but actually where they go to eat. Which means we need to be more investing in making regional food, whole foods available and affordable. That's a long answer to your question. I use it, they're very effective, they're really safe, they are very well tolerated when prescribed well. When you hear this, the downside of them, it's usually because a doc in the box, because you can go online and you can have this ordered for you, or you go now to compounding pharmacies, are taking the product that scientists use to treat animals with it, and they're just taking that and putting it into, solution. So you can get it aware, but if you don't know how to prescribe it, people can get pretty sick when they first start it. It's good stuff. I guess Oprah Winfrey is giving a talk on this, or on Sunday. She's doing a special.
How do you go about changing the mindset of the schools? Our schools are feeding our children at a greater rate than they were 50 years ago. I mean, there was few kids that we knew got hot lunch when we went to school. That tells you how old I am. And now, almost, 80% of the kids eat lunches at school, but yet our schools are still handing out cardboard pizza on Fridays.
Have everybody heard that? The question was, how do we improve the offerings at our schools? Because so many kids now eat there. Breakfast, lunch. And it actually was targeted during the pandemic as one of the things that need to be held up in that regard. I will say I'm not qualified to answer that question, but over at this table, my wife is a pediatrician who does what I did, and Diane Stadler over there actually has been a principal investigator on such a study. So if anybody has that question, please go talk to them. They'll be happy to talk your ear off. But it is a challenge, because what you're talking about is policy. So again, I came back to, I don't have a prescription to give to a kid to take to a school and say, you need to feed me better. And so we think of the doctors, well, what are you going to do about that? But we need policy, we need people who are, who know the science, who can sway, make those economic arguments that this is not only good for now, but for later too. All right, well, thank you very much.
You guys can maybe hear me, but I'm Miguel. I am a public health major, as they said, from Pacific University. And a few words I'd like to say about the Mica program was that, again, during that video, it was really eye-opening to me. I am an only child from a single mother. Unfortunately, my dad passed away at a very young age, so my mom took a very big role, and to me, it was really important because obviously, not having a dad in today's society is pretty hard on a male. And that was one of the things that I saw during the Mica program, that a lot of those students, especially at Rosemary Anderson and David Douglas, a lot of them, it seems like the system somewhat failed them. And I think that us as mentors, took a bigger role than what we were really expecting. It wasn't just about teaching them like, hey, eat healthier, you gotta eat carrots or like broccoli or something. It was about really, drilling into them and telling them like, there's so much that can be done with any like health field, public health, whether it's being a doctor, whether it's being a teacher, whatever it is. And I think I saw that in a lot of the students when I talked to them, where they were just like, how do I better myself? How do I get into a career like this? How do I make a change? And I think when we spoke to them, again, a lot of them were just really eager to get into it. And I think it's because we were allowing ourselves to be peers with them. And I think that's the great thing about this program. If you really give the Mica program a shot, and they've already done so much, but I think if they just keep exceeding what they're doing and they have more support, they're going to be able to help a lot more students. And I think that's needed right now, especially for those kids, because again, a lot of them have so much potential, but I think our system kind of just leaves them in the back, and it's unfortunate. But for me, just again, understanding what a lot of those kids went through, and then showing them like, hey, I was in your shoes once, and I'm about to finish college. I'm gonna get a master's degree, so you know, it's not to brag to them, but again, it's like telling them like, if I can do it, I know you guys can, and I know you just need the slightest little push. So I think that was a big thing, and you know, I don't want to get emotional, but I thank Justin a lot for the opportunity to really just connect with those kids and really make an impact, even if it was just for a few minutes of their day, a few hours, and it was just for my practicum. So.